everybody. It's great to have you on board, and it's Paula Nutting with your Ask Me Anything program for this month, month of April. And today I'm so excited to have someone closer to home versus internationally. And this month we feature Chris Reed, who is a Bowen practitioner who teaches Bowen. And it's one of those fields that's got some great history because it's Australian-based, originally from Tom Bowen down in Geelong, but we're going to get Chris to answer all those questions for us when we get him on board. And for you to ask any questions that you might have on what Bowen is, how you can apply it and adapt it if you're a remedial massage therapist or myotherapist or whatever clinical field that you're in. And hopefully Chris will be able to answer all those questions for you. So let's get a chance to chat with Chris and see what he can give us with information on the benefits of Bowen therapy. Howdy, Chris.
Good morning. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. How are you?
Very good, and thanks very much for the invitation to come on and have a chat today.
Well, I'm more excited about two things. One, that it's not daylight savings anymore, so I can't get the times wrong again. And B, that I've got an Australian. We've got someone from Australia talking about something that's quite passionate. And the background of Tom Bowen is quite amazing. But I want give us background about you first. How did you get involved in the industry? Where did you come from? What's the Chris Reed story?
Well, for 20 years I was a chef, Paula. Worked in restaurants in Australia and overseas, and was very happy doing that. But my wife was a nurse, and we met at 15 and 16, back as you did back in the day. And she went into and studied nursing, and I was always really intrigued by her study. And I think you were a nurse in a past life too, weren't you? And I mean, some of the conversations that nurses have around the dinner table and those sorts of things when they work with their colleagues are quite remarkable. But I was just intrigued by her study, by the human body. And while I was working as a chef, I come home one day. I was about 35. We had two small children, and I said, "I'm going to do nursing." And she said, "No, you're not." I said, "Okay, right. Well, I want to do." She said, "Well, what's this about?" And I want to do something. I want to do something more. I want to make more of a difference, I suppose, is what I wanted to do with life. You know, it was great to be able to cook for people and give them a great meal, but it just wasn't, floating my boat anymore. I think I always want to make a difference in people's lives. So we did a bit of a list of what do you want this new job to be, or what? So I looked at, so I wanted to be sort of medical or quasi-medical, if you like. I wanted to sort of make a difference in people's health. So we decided to do massage. So she said, "What have you ever thought about being a massage therapist?" And I thought, "No, I've never thought about that." So I started off one day a week, traveling to Melbourne to do a certificate for remedial therapies back then, about 1997.
Yeah.
And one day a week, it took me a long time. But anyway, we finally got there. But partway through my study, I met, I was at an aunt's, she was dying of cancer. And she had decided 6 months before she died, she'd invite everybody that would come to her funeral to come and have a party with her. What a great idea. Yeah. Fantastic. And a distant aunt said, "What are you doing, Chris?" I said, "I'm doing massage." She said, "Oh, have you thought about doing Bowen therapy?" I said, "I don't know what that is." And I just thought it's just another massage technique. And look, I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty full learning what I'm learning. She said, "Well, my daughter's doing it up in Hamilton. Why don't you come up and check it out?" And she was actually working in Ozzie Rench's clinic. She had taken over Ozzie Rench's clinic because Ozzie was off teaching around the world. And she was a naturopath. So just to appease her, I said, "Look, I'll come up and have a chat." And thought, "Oh, here we go. There's a couple of wasted days." But anyway, the night before we got up there, I said to her, she said, "You're coming in and watching tomorrow and seeing what we do?" I said, "Yep." I said, "How many have we got booked in?" She said, 25. I said, "You got 25 tomorrow?" She goes, "Yes." And I'm thinking straight away, I wouldn't be seeing 25 if I was doing massage, I don't think, would I? So she had 3 rooms going. Sometimes she would have couples come in, but what it was that blew me away was the diversity of client that she saw on that one day that I was there. She had severely disabled client come in. She had babies come in. She had really elderly people with Parkinson's come in, and everybody else in between with sore backs, sore necks, and just a real range of clients. And I'm thinking, I don't know that I'll be seeing this client with my massage skills. At that time, so that's what really intrigued me. And then, long story short, I come back to Geelong. In the newspaper, as they were back in those days, there was an ad, first course of Bowen therapy happening in Geelong ever, since obviously Bowen had passed away. And it was happening in 2 weeks' time. So I signed up, and as they say, the rest is history. So I did the basic training back then, and it's sort of, you got to be careful when you start doing something like Bowen therapy, or it can take over your life, can't it? So within
we know that.
That's exactly right. So within a couple of years, I was attending a conference, a Bowen therapy conference, and seeing all these amazing people that I'd read about, and that. So I was just really enthralled. And within a couple of years after that, I was invited to become a teacher and instruct. I think it was about 5 years in, and I was delighted with that. And I'd always taught. I taught apprentices. I taught at TAFE. So I had a teaching background, and the idea of teaching people was fantastic, and it was an amazing opportunity. And then I found myself on the nominated for the committee of the Bowen Association.
Sorry, we had some echoing problems at the back there.
It was me. I think it's fixed now.
Yeah, no.
So I was on the, and sorry if there's any background noise here. I'm actually from my clinic today, so if there's things happening out there, I'll apologise for that. But I finished up on the committee of the Bowen Association Australia, and I said to my wife, look, I'll commit for a year. They just need someone who's from Victoria, apparently. Anyway, 15 years later, I've been president of the Bowen Association for 13 years, which I'm not anymore, but that's okay. I am actually chair now, though, these days, of the association that runs Bowen Training Australia, which is the RTO, or the training organisation that delivers certificate for and diploma of Bowen therapy in Australia. So
you must be so excited about the journey and how it's progressed.
It's just mind-blowing. So I said, you've got to be careful when you start something like this, don't you, because it takes over your life. But I suppose it just shows the passion that I have for the therapy, if you like, and also what I see it do in my clinic every day. So, and I support other therapists these days. I've got a Facebook group for the Bowen Therapy Support Network, which is about 1,800 members in that one. With a couple of other colleagues, I run the Business of Bowen, which is a Bowen mentoring coaching subscription group that we do. We basically help people build their Bowen businesses, because at the end of the day, we want as many people to do great Bowen on as many people as possible, and that's the way you change the world, isn't it?
Exactly, and that's the whole reason we put these together, is that like the mentorship group that I've got here is that, and the same as what you're doing there. You only get so much when you complete your diploma or your certificate or your advanced diploma or whatever you're doing, and then once you're out in the big world, you're then going, well, what other skills didn't I get a chance to learn, and how can I get that information in one safe, kind of comfortable space where I can get it all? And that's exactly what you've set up with your 1,800.
That's right. That's just a support network. That's right. Because, like, let's face it, when people decide to do Bowen therapy or massage therapy, or they don't decide to do that so they can become a small business person. But unfortunately, that is the byproduct. You generally finish up working for yourself and you're a small business person. And we know that 3 out of 5 businesses fail in the first year. And then of those that are left, 1 out of that 5 survive for 5 years. So giving people skills early on so they can grow successful businesses and do what they're passionate about, which is working with clients, is a great thing to do. I really enjoy that too.
And that's the difference between a deep tissue massage versus Bowen, because a lot of therapists, like it's 80% of massage therapists are sole owner occupiers, and a lot of them burn out within 3 to 5 years because of overuse of the thumb, which is ridiculous. Stop working too hard on your thumbs, everybody. There's much smarter ways to do it. But Bowen is less aggressive, isn't it? It's. Can you explain a little bit of Bowen, the history behind it, and then hopefully people can ask questions about how can I help my auntie with her shoulder, stuff like that.
Yeah, certainly. So you're right. It works. It's a much gentler form of body work, if you like. And if we put it in a nutshell, Bowen is essentially giving the body a stimulus and allowing the body to react to that stimulus to bring about a change and hopefully homeostasis. So that's it in a nutshell. So basically, and you might hear a Bowen therapist say it stimulates the body to heal itself, which is a really esoteric sort of statement, but it's actually really true. It's less of a manual therapy and more of a, as I said, allowing the body to help create the change. So by giving it the right stimulus. So, and often the stimulus. Say again.
That crosses over a tendon or something. What's unpack Bowen for people who have never heard of Bowen before.
Okay, so let me show you a typical Bowen move. Can we try this? Judy, this will work on so if you take your forearm and place your thumb on your forearm, right? And if you move this, if you can move, you can wriggle that backwards and forwards with very, very light pressure. Like imagine that any less pressure, it would slip, but it doesn't slip. It just wriggles a little bit like that. So if you take that, that's called slack, and depends on how hydrated you are. You might have more or less slack. And I mean, thoroughbred racehorses have no slack in their skin. Okay, whereas somebody, you as a massage therapist, you work on people, and sometimes they're like they're in someone else's skin because they've got so much going on there, haven't they? And often it depends on hydration and what the fascia's doing, and that's essentially what we're working on with Bowen. Often, initially, is that fascia. And so to do a Bowen move, you'll take the slack, if you like, just in one direction, say back towards you, very gentle, then press in against the muscle you come up against there, press in and sit. And now with that amount of pressure that you've applied, a little bit of pressure, you just roll back across where you came from. So if I do it there, it's like just coming across like that. And then you take your hand away and don't touch it. Because if you rub that now or do something else, you will then create another stimulus. Sometimes I do that on a client. They say, what's Bowen? I say, can I have your arm? And I just do a move. And I talk to them from it. I say, you know where I did that move back there? Can you still feel that? They go, yes, I can. So if you can feel it, the body's aware, the brain's aware, there's stuff going on with that. Now, whether that muscle was short, whether the fascia needed hydration, whether, it's connected to viscera via association neurons at the spinal cord level. There's so much can happen when you give the body time to think about what it just received. Yeah. So and I suppose the other main difference in Bowen is that we have these waiting periods in between what we call sets of moves, if you like. So we might do 4 moves over particular points, and then we wait. And the wait is really interesting because clients go, how come you're sitting over there at the desk and you're not working on me here? I come in for an hour of work, I thought. And you say, well, yeah, the body's doing the work. We're just giving it a stimulus. Do you know what I mean? So you might have a 2-minute wait. Or you might, and it's really interesting. Some Bowen procedures have a 5-minute wait. Some have a 20-minute wait. Where you do the prerequisites, you do the procedures, because we're looking at something really specific here, and you say, right, I'm going to let you rest for 20 minutes, and then you might even leave the room. You might sit quietly. You're not going to chat, because if you chat, what are you doing? They're thinking, aren't they? They're not thinking about what they're feeling. They're having a conversation. So yeah, and then that's it for the day. No more work done after that last move. Don't go and get a massage. Don't go and have a hot shower. Just let the body go with that stimulus for the rest of the day and tonight while you're asleep. And sometimes that's hard for people to grasp, but when the client comes back and says, oh, wow, that was amazing, the changes that occurred throughout the week. So when they walk out the door, that's not going to be as good as they feel for the rest of the week. It's going to continue to work for them sometimes. So we rarely retreat under 7 days if we're going to have a retreatment, unless someone re-injures themselves or something like that. So there's some sort of specific I talk about it as being working within a Bowen framework or Bowen philosophy. There are some sort of, let's not call them rules, some real guidelines around how we work with Bowen. Yeah, it's just fascinating sometimes.
Yeah, and when you think about a massage therapist in their format, the best feeling that person will feel is like either if they came in with a tight neck, they come out with a nice, loose, relaxed joint mobility, maybe a little bit sore for the 24-hour post-treatment, that stiffness or tenderness they have, and then they feel amazing, where you are like progressively going up to a
What's
peak.
Really interesting, Paula, is that, what's really interesting, and often I draw this for students, is you get a bit of say today's pain is here, if you like, or there's the stiffness or what we can. you do get that next day. You might get a little bit of what we sometimes call a healing crisis, or that inflammation, or that attention, if you like. So it can be a bit more sensitive the next day, but then it'll slowly sort of ease away in a bit of a pendulum, if you like. But then at day 7, don't be surprised if it's back at about 60% perhaps of what it was, or 40% of what it was, you know what I mean, or 70% of what, just because you get that. And then hopefully with that next treatment, you often don't get that healing crisis. It's really interesting, and you might see with massage too, I think. I mean, I'm a myotherapist, so I think I do needling, and I do remedial massage as well. But, you know, that first treatment, when someone gets a first Bowen treatment, wow, what they feel the next day they can feel really, they ring you up, so I feel like I've been hit by a bus. You hardly touch me, but I feel like I've been hit by a bus, you know. But they won't get that generally on subsequent treatments. It's often that first treatment. So it's really interesting that the body reacts so strongly to that first information. Yeah.
That's interesting. Come up from that one. Diane has just made a comment that the hardest thing to learn initially is to take your thumb off. So, yes.
if we're teaching massage therapists, because they like to leave a hand on, especially if they're moving around the body, you stay in contact with your client. With Bowen, we're saying, let's take the hands away, you know.
Yeah,
you're
taught contact and stay contact the whole time to keep it a smooth. And I get that, because there's a sensory, like we're trying to use the parasympathetic nervous system and deregulate the body, and that lovely calmness through there. But the second point that I was interested in, you're myotherapist, dry needling, etc. Can you integrate the two in the same treatment time?
I never do. And the philosophy of Bowen is that basically, if we say that, look, we're going to do minimal amount of work, and we're going to let you do that and let the body process that, then you wouldn't put needles in and you wouldn't massage afterwards. I mean, Tom Bowen himself, Ozzie, you heard me mention Ozzie Rench before. Ozzie Rench began Bowtech back in the, that's a long time ago, back in the sort of early 90s, late 80s. And he was one of the 6 that worked with Tom Bowen over that period of time when Bowen was working in Geelong through the 50s, the 60s, and 70s. And Bowen said to him, because Ozzie was a massage therapist, Ozzie said, don't massage when you do my work. So Ozzie's been very, very pedantic. Wherever he's gone, he said, you don't do anything else. Now, it was interesting. One of the other men that worked with him was a chiropractor. And he says, he said to me, Tom Bowen never told me not to mix it, if you like. And I said to him, well, I think chiropractic adjustment or chiropractic work is going to be a bit different to someone doing massage, isn't it? You might do an adjustment, which is a stimulus, I suppose, or a way of manipulation, but you're not going to be massaging someone for half an hour after you've done that. He said, no, we don't. I said, well, maybe that's why Bowen didn't say that to you, but he did say to a massage therapist, don't massage when you do this. Yeah. Because I think if we think about the amount of stimulus that the body gets during massage is amazing, isn't it? Like that, the amount of input that the body gets. So I see massage as more of a manual type therapy, or myofascial release often as more of a manual type therapy, whereas Bowen is really working more with the body. That's how I sort of tend to think about it in my own head.
Yeah. Tell me about Tom Bowen, because I know that he was he an electrician or
No, he was a leading hand at the cement works here in Geelong, and he worked in the I had a chap come in a few years ago now, but he was in his 80s, because Tom Bowen died in 82, and this bloke worked with Bowen, and he said, I was walking through what they call it, the machine shop, he called it, or something, up at the cement works, and Tom Bowen was on the steam hammer with this big thing banging something out, I don't know. And he said, I used to wear a brace. And he said, I wore this brace. It was very uncomfortable, because back in the sort of, it would have been 60s, it probably would have had leather. I don't know, it wouldn't have been as sophisticated these days. It would have been quite uncomfortable. He wore a brace around his whole back and chest. And Bowen said, I could help you. He called out to him, I could help you. And the guy said, we had a conversation. He said, well, I'll talk to my manager, and he talked to his manager. So during Smoko, Bowen met me up in the Smoko room, and he worked on my back. And he said, I went to put my brace back on, and Bowen said to him, you won't need that anymore. And he said, I never wore it again. He said, I saw Bowen every now and then, and that's what he used to do. He used to work during the cement works. So people say, how could a bloke who was a leading hand at the cement works develop a therapy? You know, he just had a he had a keen interest. He was a football trainer, and there were guys. I mean, I think, you know, we talk about there are people who just have. I'm trying to think of the chap's last name, Pat. He's up in Donald, up in Victoria here, and a lot of the footballers go to him. And it's okay, he's in about late 80s now, but a lot of there are what they call them bush doctors or whatever. They seem to develop these sort of techniques, or they have it. But he seemed to develop something quite different. It was a bit of, and when he tried to get registered as an osteopath, Bowen himself, because osteopathy board was formed, and they could grandfather people in. So he went before the board to register as an osteopath, because he wanted recognition for himself, but also for that, I suppose, for his clients as well, you know. But they wouldn't let him in because they said, "Where'd you train?" He said, "I'm basically self-taught." And they said, "Well, that's no good to us." And he didn't have the anatomical terminology and that sort of stuff that they really wanted him to be formally trained in, you see. But, I mean, he had people coming from Ballarat, from Bendigo, we're talking about hour and a half drive. When we were cleaning out my mother-in-law's house in a 2-hour driveway in Terang, I found Tom Bowen's card, and that was gold. I've never seen one of these before. So I've got his business card framed out the front there. But so she was from 2.5 hours away. So people would travel. And interestingly enough, the way he set up his clinic, you only you either went in the morning or the afternoon. You'd ring up and they'd say yes, come in the morning or come in the afternoon. So when they get there, because I treat one of his late receptionists comes in for treatment with me. And interestingly enough, I said to her when I first met her a number of years ago, "When's the last time you had a Bowen?" She said, "When Mr. Bowen worked on me." I said, "Oh, okay, well, no pressure there." So, but they would turn up, and people would be lined up out the gate of the clinic before they got there, and they'd come in the back door. So they'd let people in, you'd pay your money, and you'd get, you know, those raffle tickets with the tear-off bit? Yeah. You'd take one of those, and you'd go and sit down. So it had your number on it. So they just worked through the numbers. Now, they estimated, the government did a review, and they estimated that he did about 17,000 people a year. So if you do the math, it's around about 100 and something people a day would be seen by that clinic. And, you know, and sometimes he did have these other guys working with him. Most of the time, he was the one doing the work. So it's incredible that, you know, he had such a reputation. And it's wonderful to see people that have worked. I had a ring. Well, there you go. A fella rang me yesterday. He said, "Oh, I've got this terrible phlegm on my chest." And he said, can you see me? And I said, "Have you been to your doctor?" I'm thinking, and he said, "Oh, mate, yeah, I've been to the doctor. I've had it for ages." He said, "I went to Tommy Bowen. He worked on me once and I was great." This is like probably 60 years ago, right? Anyway, so he's coming to see me today. So I don't know if I can perform a miracle like Bowen did back then, but anyway, he's coming to see me for phlegm on his chest. Anyway, but that was how he worked. So it's remarkable, isn't it? It's a terrific story, you know.
Yeah. And for those people who are not Australian, and here, smoko means taking a break. Like it's like a morning tea or afternoon tea break. But we've always called it smoko around here because it's when people go off and have a cigarette. So that's because there'll be people up there going, what? It's a smoko, you know. But that's exactly what a smoko is. All right. So are there if someone's going to do the certificate 4, they learn and the diploma, they learn their anatomy and physiology, I'm guessing, because that's foundational.
Nationally recognised course. You've got anatomy, physiology. You've got your communication units on health and safety and those types of ancillary things. But the Bowen side of it itself is taught through hands-on workshops, if you like. So you'll do a 2-day workshop once every 6 weeks, and there's 7 of those, if you like, for the certificate 4. And you're doing case studies, and you're doing you've got to do 100 hours of logged practice, and each of those is a treatment that you'll log, and then your trainer will check that. So it's quite rigorous, really. But I mean, the good thing about if you're a recently trained or up-to-date massage therapist, you'll certainly be able to RPL, or if you're recently trained and the health training package hasn't changed too much, you'll get a credit transfer. So which can for those other units. Yeah.
Okay. So as a massage or as a Bowen therapist, and I want to, I've been treating for a while, and I'm working in that space. Is there, if I've got someone who comes in with lower back pain or neck pain, is there homework that they can do? Is there self-treatment with Bowen techniques?
Not so much treatment, but really the homework is going to be therapeutic exercise. So it's exactly the same as whether you're a remedial massage therapist or a myotherapist, clinical myo. I think sending someone home and getting them to do some remedial, rehabilitation, whether that be walking or whether that be moving more often and not sitting for too long in their chair, or whether that's actually doing some glute bridges, or if you've got lateral hip pain, you're doing some abductor work. So sending them home with that homework is still really, really important.
Yeah.
So that's the main.
What do we do if we want? I'm trying to see if there's something that people can go, oh, that's something I can do for me. So we've got therapists who might have, we've all got overworked arms. Are there things that we can do to ourselves?
Look, anywhere you can reach, you can do Bowen on yourself effectively. I haven't explained. Bowen is made up. Often they're made up initially when you're training, because you've got to have some sort of a roadmap to work with, don't you? So there's procedures or protocols that are developed, basically saying, okay, do this move here, that one there, in this direction, and then do these two ones here, and then let's wait a couple of minutes, and then we come back in, we do a few more in these different spots. So that basic move we talked about before, about finding the position and then taking the slack in the opposite direction, applying a challenge in against the fascia, in against the tissue, and then rolling across it with that pressure, is your basic move. You can do those all over the place around that. I think what we're essentially working with is this amazing tissue that is really starting to become discovered really, and doing a lot more work on now, is fascia. And that's really, I think, that at the end of the day, when we really do in 100 years' time, really understand why we get such amazing results with Bowen therapy, and it might take 100 years for us to really, really know this, I don't know, but it's going to come back. It's going to come back to fascia and the way that it works with that. And some of the stuff I love reading is, Robert Schleich's work, and some of that sort of stuff that's coming out of Germany these days, and the Steccos from Italy, and reading some of their research articles around fascia is just, and my brain goes, so is that what, is that what it's all about? So, and even some of the other, like they're saying now that fascia is the most innovative tissue in the body. So there is so much going on in the body when you're stimulating the fascia. So even most Bowen, treatments will start with 2 moves in the lower back. So if anyone watching wants to try this on themselves, they can probably reach around and have a go. And what you do is you find the top of the ilium. So you find certainly your highest part of the ilium. You come across to the spinous processes. You draw a line across your spinous processes. What you're going to do on a client as well. And then you're going to come up about a finger width. So it's going to put you about L4. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now feel the erector spine on either side. You can feel one side or the other. And then you're going to come to the belly of that erector, because it's going to feel like a little bit of a dome there. Mm-hmm. Okay. But really, if you think about it in your mind, what you're working on there is this lumbar fascia, isn't it? And that's the top layer, effectively, isn't it? So, and now what you're going to do is you're going to take your slack to the outside, laterally, press in, and make a medial move back towards, but don't slip. There's no sliding in Bowen. We never slip over the skin. So by not slipping over the skin, you are really stimulating that superficial fascia, this highly, highly innervated fascia. And then you do those 2 moves and take your hands away. Okay. Now it's interesting. There's a couple of our trainers work within almost like a traditional Chinese medicine framework, in that they'll do those first 2 moves. They do teach this in a workshop, a postgrad workshop. You do those first 2 moves on a client and you wait. And they might wait a number of minutes. And what they say to the client is, when you feel that go somewhere, let us know where it goes. And it seems someone will say, I don't know if this is real, but I can start to feel something in my shoulder, or I can feel something in my calf, or in my knee, or my hip. And then they basically use the meridian associated with that area and the muscles affected by that meridian, and then they do their Bowen there. Do you know what I mean? So it's a different sort of a way of actually approaching it rather than a purely musculoskeletal orthopedic test sort of way about going things. But that's really interesting that area there is so highly innervated with tissue, with nerves and those sensory organs. You know, so that's really what we're working with, Bowen, is those sensory organs.
Yeah, and that's the way we should be working. And you know, the more and more that we talk and read about the research around it, it's actually that we are working far more on the connective tissue, so our superficial and then deeper fascia, and how they talk to each other, and that functional, actual functional anatomy, like what we learned at school, is really being challenged nowadays. Gil Headley.
Really? Have you seen? What's his name? Oh, it's going to come back to me. He did the fuzz speech years ago. Gil Headley. He's been putting out some little snippets just recently, saying, you know, origin insertion, really, because it's all connected through connective tissue. Because they used to take the connective tissue away so they could get at the real stuff, which was that muscle. But now we're learning that the stuff that was around the outside was actually probably more important than the muscle. So it is interesting. Yeah,
and I'm lucky to be interviewing him in June. So
that'll be great.
Really excited about that.
He's amazing. It's just like you flick a switch and you sit back and you just listen. He's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Phil was saying, how do you convince the modern population about Bowen? So Phil did his Cert 4 in massage therapy, and how much of that goes to the kudos in the Cert 4 and Bowen therapy? So he's got
it would depend how long you did your Cert 4.
Just finished it, I believe.
Just finished, yeah. So that would, if it's the same training package, you'll get credit transfer straight across. So there'd be no fee for those ancillary units. So you just have to learn the Bowen side of it, if you like. So how do we teach? How do we get there? Well, I've been in Geelong a long time. Tom Bowen was from Geelong, and I still meet an awful lot of people who say Bowen therapy, what's that? But there is a lot more around these days than 20 years ago when I learned. So it's a bit of a slow burn, Philip, I think. But the best way is word of mouth. It's a bit like anything. If you get somebody, most of my clients come through word of mouth. It's like, you know, I felt great. I tell my friend. That's how it works. But really, and it's like any other business, I suppose. Getting out there, letting people know you're there is the other thing too. But yes, and it is. What's interesting, sometimes we have massage therapists who learn Bowen who like to convert a lot of their massage people to Bowen. Some will, but some people just like that whole with the oil or the cream and that whole process with massage. So you may never convert them, but they might not be coming perhaps if they come in one day and say, look, my wife's had a baby and we've been up all night and the baby's got colic, and you say, you know, Bowen therapy has got can have some great results with colic. And they say, yeah, the baby's only 2 or 3 weeks old. You say, bring him in. I mean, last week I had a 5-day-old baby in here, the mother boarding. I said, how's he going? She said, well, he's going pretty well. But if you could do what you did for his brother 3 years ago and do it on this guy, that'd be amazing. So, you know, things like that, like working with conditions like that. Bedwetting with children is another one. We have a great protocol for bedwetting. They did a big study in Bulgaria with Bowen therapy on bedwetters, and it came in at about 75 to 80% success after about 6 treatments.
I need that. My 4-year-old grandson has just started that again, so I'll be definitely.
That's kids they'll come in. They'll be wet for 7 nights a week, and within 6 weeks they're dry. You know, and that's 75 to 80%. That's no drugs. That's just Bowen therapy and some dietary recommendations. It's amazing. You know, so that's sort of and night terrors with toddlers is another one. I don't know if you ever know night terrors. Like toddlers will wake up screaming, and you can't really wake them. They're sort of in this, you know, in a state. It's not really, but it can go on for an hour or an hour and a half. I've had remarkable results with that. Just a little gentle treatment that takes about 15 minutes, probably about, I don't know, 15 moves on the body, if you like, but very gentle on a toddler, and can be resolved. So they're the type of things that's how you convince somebody the power of Bowen therapy is often when you do it on something that maybe you might not use massage for, perhaps. You know? Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. I wonder if you can guess the most Googled question about Bowen therapy is, can Bowen therapy help anxiety? That's the most asked questions on Google when we did the SEO work. So it's remarkable what people are sort of looking for these days, you know. And if we can help, and you talked before about working with the sympathetic, parasympathetic system and getting the body to slow down a little bit, you know, just to sort of to de-escalate, to modulate that. And these days we're all, I think most of us with COVID and all the lockdowns and all that sort of stuff, and kids not at school, there's so much anxiety around. So certainly if you've got a gentle modality that can really change a child or a person's anxiety state and actually then perhaps help them, you know, through that crisis, it's remarkable. So,
and when you think about it, the amount of kids that are hearing nowadays, just listening to parents speaking, and it's like, this is what's happening. COVID's done this. The coronavirus. There's 10,000 people coming every day in Queensland, or Queensland now. The long COVID. Oh, schools are super spreaders. So, you know, what kind of anxiety message are we sending to our children just in the way we're speaking? So, yeah, anything that's going to help with anxiety, because anxiety across the planet has escalated, and the statistics are quite dramatic on the Gen Y. The younger kids, and how they're really not managing stress at all. Chris, Anthony has asked, can you talk about the significance of the tailbone and the TMJ connection in Bowen, please?
Yeah, so the coccyx and the TMJ, there is a real connection there, and it comes back to some of the Lovett brothers' work, doesn't it, with that the tail and then craniosacral also, I suppose, is based in the same sort of work, isn't it? Sort of, it's interesting. We do have we do a procedure, if you like, over the coccyx, over the coccyx, and we often do it for things around that region. So for people with even endometrial pain or issues with menstrual cycle or fertility and those types of things, we can sometimes will work. It's indicated for those types of things. And interestingly enough, even migraine, it may be the coccyx that needs to be worked on to try and assist someone in migraine. And then you've got at the other end of the spectrum, you've got, if you like, or the other end of the spine, you've got the TMJ and the connection to the directly into the spine with the TMJ connection through the jaw and the muscles of the maxilla of the face and the area through there. So there really is this connection. It's interesting. I said to I rang when I was very early on. I was just starting out, and I had a client come in who had terrible vertigo, and I rang Ozzie back in the day when you could actually ring Ozzie on the phone. And I said, Ozzie, I've got a lady here. Can I do TMJ and coccyx in the same visit? Because there's some things we say, you know, that they're big procedures, you know. And he said, all he said to me was, it's not for the faint-hearted. And I thought, oh, thanks, and hung up. So I thought, well, thanks. That wasn't a yes or a no. It wasn't for the faint-hearted. What he meant was she wouldn't want to be faint-hearted to receive two powerful procedures like that in the one go. But it may have been exactly what she wanted at the time or needed at the time. You know, there can be a real significance, a real connection between the two. But I rarely do those two procedures in the same session. But sometimes, you know, you just got to try something a little bit different or a little bit out of the box if you're not getting the result that you thought you might get, you know, with a procedure. But there really is that connection between TMJ and coccyx.
It's interesting. We talk about how the vagal, the ocular nerve, actually, or the ocular, the ocular nerve locks into the vagal nerve. So a lot of that, what you see, if it's dramatic enough, is going to affect your sympathetic nervous system. So we can conversely change. Do you do any work with like, how much work do you do up in the head and neck, like specific neural assistance?
Yeah, we certainly do work through a lot through TMJ itself. There's a number of procedures around that upper respiratory area through here, and certainly obviously at the back for I mean, because we know from trigger point theory and that a lot of perhaps neuralgia or headaches or temporal headaches can come from SEM either side. So certainly working gently through SEM. Once again, we don't slide on the SEM. We're just stimulating the fascia underneath with gentle little moves. That might be really So basically just coming down. Think about almost like a straw. You come in behind your SCM and just draw down. Let go a bit further, press in and draw down. So certainly working, and you'll know lymphatically, incredible number of, just down. Move up a little bit and down. So it's like working out of a straw. But a lot of lymphatics behind here as well, sort of things, that lymphatic system into the neck. We do a lot through there. We certainly do work for, and it's interesting, when you learn Bowen, we're going to say that if someone has, like, say, floaters in the eye, which is interesting, or an eyesight issue, do you know, and think, well, how can you treat someone with eyesight with a man? Well, eyesight's often muscle contraction, isn't it?
Mm.
So if we can affect a muscle in the leg, why can't we affect a muscle that determines how the eye is being held? So, there's those types of things. So we don't say Bowen can fix your short-sightedness, but perhaps Bowen is indicated for short-sightedness. It's a slight difference with that. But that's certainly how we sort of might approach that. But we certainly do some work through the back, near the vision centres, out on the occiput here. But remember, we're giving the body a stimulus, and that's the difference. And that's how we can, another one is constipation. Those remarkable results for constipation, especially with little ones, kids, 10 days. This woman brought this child in, she was probably about 3. She said, and this woman was a nurse, and she said, look, we've put everything down it, we've put everything up it, we just cannot move this. And the little kid's sitting on her knees. So I did this little move on her, these little few moves on her, and she went home and went to the toilet. So, and I had a similar thing with an 80-year-old woman in a nursing home who was terribly constipated in a wheelchair, and I treated her there. She went within an hour. It's interesting. So doing some work on the fascia and the corresponding and similar muscles stimulates the organs. It basically gets that going. So every day I go, wow, this is amazing stuff. But I tell my students, this isn't miracle therapy, okay? We don't fix everybody, but some of the results you're going to get from time to time, you're going to go, wow, was I involved in doing that? And that's not me doing it. It's actually the technique, and their body is doing it, which is what's quite remarkable.
Yeah, no, that's what Fee was saying before. She agrees. So many people think that we must be hands-on all the time and have the mindset that small moves are actually doing nothing. So, we have that the same with teaching the neurolymphatic point work. We're actually targeting this. It's the same. It's the spinal reflex endpoints that are sitting in the fascia, and we're working specific areas. But for us, we'll apply a strength test before and after to see if we've actually changed that neurological loop. But it's still the connective tissue. It's still the fascia and how it affects the muscle, the viscera, the surrounding plexus. So,
when you're talking to Robert Schleip, he may tell you that they're really starting to find now how fascia can affect the autonomic nervous system. So that's remarkable. That a big effect on the autonomic nervous system through doing gentle work. So. And we talk about adhesions and tightness and those sorts of things. There's a really interesting study done a few years ago where they induced some adhesions in the stomach wall, the stomach of a rat. So they got the stomach wall effectively stuck to the stomach, if you like. So, but doing very gentle manipulation or massage, Bowen, whatever you want to call it, was able to reduce those adhesions. So it wasn't through pulling it apart. It was actually through very gentle work that you can reduce adhesions. So like if someone's got a trigger finger and it gets caught all the time, it doesn't sort of work. You do some very gentle work across that tendon or that joint where it's coming through. Sometimes it just changes, and then you go, oh, I got a guy there. He says, look, my fingers don't get stuck no more. I said, that's fantastic. Yeah. It is interesting, isn't it? The
old term for unwinding, and that's a craniosacral or myofascial work. It's being mindful and present and sitting down and waiting for the body to respond. And we're not forcibly changing, but we're guiding and assisting. And I think that that's the role of a good therapist is to stop beating people up and putting our mental force onto this is the outcome that I'm going to give you versus I'm going to be here and I'm going to facilitate the body, as you say, the healing. It's the journey of wellness. It's how they can flip from dis-ease to health. and moving it in that forward move. And John Sharkey talks on it. Robert Schleit talks on it. There's so many. Aubrey Gowing talks on it. There's so many like high level presenters and researchers that are all saying the same thing. We're the only change we can really make is a placebo change, and there's nothing wrong with placebo at all, because if someone says I have had pain for weeks, but I knew I was coming to see you today, and what do we hear? They woke up and the pain's gone.
Happens all the time. It's great.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm here. I feel like a fraud. Yeah. But you mentioned before about being present and being in the moment and that sort of thing. There's a great study done by Lorimer Moseley, the fantastic physio researcher out of Adelaide, where they're working on people with chronic regional pain syndrome. And they had their hand, one hand was hidden behind a wall. They couldn't see their hand. And they were touched on various places on the back of the hand by either a sharp or a blunter object. And they had to write, so that the study group had to then draw on a hand that was drawn in front of them where they were touched and whether it was sharp or a blunter. So they really had to concentrate on what was happening to that hand that they couldn't see. The control group got exactly the same treatment on their hand, on their affected hand with the chronic regional pain syndrome. But they weren't told to mark or to pay attention to the therapy. They just could read a book or listen to music or something like that. The results in that experiment were amazing. Those people that paid attention to what was being done to them got terrific results. The control group that didn't pay attention got no change to their pain whatsoever. So it just sometimes, and when I heard that, I gone, oh, wow, is that why we leave the room? Is that why we don't continually talk to our client? Is that why we don't overlay that stimulus straight away? We let them feel. Look, I don't say to my clients, feel what I'm doing, you know. I don't say to them, hey, I'm going to come back and ask you what you felt, but just leave the body with that space. And I thought, wow, is that one of the mechanisms that Bowen works by? Allowing the body to be aware, you know, and like you said, so we're facilitators. Yeah, it's great.
I heard a story one time that somebody was saying, and there was Ozzie Rench. Who were the other disciples?
Oh, now you're going to ask me all their names, aren't you?
Yeah. Only the ones you remember.
Romney Smeaton is in Geelong. He's the chiropractor that I was talking about before.
Yeah.
Kevin Ryan was an osteopath. Nigel Love was, I think, another osteo. Keith Davis was another chap further around who he was, I think he might have been osteo as well. It's interesting, the ones that there were osteos and chiros and one massage therapist. And the one person, and I wondered, I sort of wondered this in my own head, I wondered, is that why Ozzie was able to take what he saw and just use it and absorb it and say, this is what I saw, whereas all the others had to fit what they saw into their paradigm because they were already trained as an osteopath or trained as a chiropractor, so they had to fit that around their knowledge already. Whereas Ozzie basically, I mean, back in the 80s, I don't know how good massage training was back in the 80s. It wasn't fantastic. It wasn't even brilliant in the 90s when I did it, or 70s when Ozzie did it. So he probably almost came as a bit of an empty cup and was able to sort of basically just absorb what he saw and then replicate it. And that's why it sort of stayed. And really cute. And people got very often a bit upset because Ollie was so pedantic. You've got to do it this way. You don't do anything else with it. But really, I think Bowen would have been lost to perhaps the massage, not lost to massaging, but would have been absorbed into some other sort of therapies, I think, had he not been as pedantic as he taught around the world.
That makes sense. If he was flicking and then still massaging, it would have been diluted to the point that it wasn't useful. An old friend of mine, Steve Jones, knew Romney because he was down in Geelong, or he used to teach around that area. He was a physio, and he was learning the Bowen techniques from Romney, which he said that Romney would say, you know, some of them would be, and you touched on it before, like someone would say you can't work deeply, and said, oh no, he would always work really hard on this person. Like the different practitioners, different disciples were applying it completely different. And each one of them said that Tom had said, this is the way you must apply it. So he was definitely targeting, if you're an osteopath, I'm going to be telling you how to apply it in your modality. If you're a chiropractor, I'm going to tell you how to do it in your modality.
And when Ozzie tells it, when he said what he said, he had no notes. So Bowen had no notes. So he said, watch me work, right? So watch me work. So people, they just had to watch him, and he wasn't great. He wasn't a great communicator. In fact, he had these glasses because he was quite deaf, and he had these glasses that had this really innovative hearing aid on the arm of the glasses, and they reckon that he often turned it off, so he wouldn't talk to the client either. Do you know what I mean? So people thought it was quite rude, you know. But I suppose if you're treating that many people, you probably no time for conversations. You just did what you had to do, and you got out of the room. He always had an assistant with him, so he'd walk into the room. There'd be a card. He'd look at the card. He'd do what he had to do. He'd walk out of the room, and the assistant might say, "Oh, Mr. Bowen wants you to turn over now." So they'd help them turn over. He'd come back in. He'd be doing. So he'd be going to these 4 rooms, you know. Quite remarkable, really. Incredible.
Unbelievable.
So,
yeah. Steve said that he was talking to Romney, and Romney was with Tom at the time, and he walked into his clinic, walked past this woman, and said to her, "Oh, congratulations." And the woman looked quizzled at him, and Tom said, "Oh, you're pregnant. Didn't you know?" And she later on found out that she was actually 6 weeks pregnant. So his
just a quick one. I had this old farmer come into me, and he was telling me, he said, I had a sore back. I was complaining to my mate I had a sore back, and he said, I'll go and see Tommy Bowen. He said, I'm not going to those. Anyway, so he said he rang this guy up at 3 o'clock in the morning one day because his back was absolutely killing him. And he said, what was the name of that bloke? Anyway, so he went in. He said, I walked in there, and he said it was wall-to-wall misery, is what he said. And he said there was people sitting around, wall-to-wall misery. And he wasn't all that happy about necessarily having to go there, I think. Anyway, he said, so I paid me money. And he said, this bloke walked up to me and said, I can see you got a sore back. And he said, it was Tom Bowen. He said, but he said, I've been sitting in this chair for half an hour or 3/4 an hour. He said, how can you, he said, he knew I had a sore back by the way I was sitting. So he said, he took me into the room. He did some work on me. He left, he come back. He did some more work on me. He did that a couple of times. He said, and then he said, right, that's it, you can go home. And the guy, he said, I walked out there, I was fuming. He said, I thought, what a take. What an absolute charlatan. Anyway, he said, by the time I got home, I got out of the truck. He said, my back was bloody fixed. I couldn't believe it. And this guy swears like a trooper, you know, but it was amazing. This grumpy old farmer had this result when he thought he'd been taken for a ride, you know. So, yeah, terrific stories. You know, they're just a remarkable man. And in fact, the way that I think the fact we're so lucky that Ozzie was able to take what he saw and write it down effectively and put it into a way so it could be taught around the world. I mean, you know, one of the biggest areas that's spreading to at the moment is there's a physiotherapist in Bulgaria at the moment, Georgi Ilishev, and he's doing remarkable work, and they're doing studies over there. And that Eastern Europe is a area of remarkable change, and a lot of Bowen therapy being taught over there at the moment. And obviously, it's, you know, UK and America and other European countries. But yeah, it's terrific.
Yeah, they do more research. They tend to do a lot of research out of those areas, and Japan. Phil's asking, what do you think about music in the background in the clinic?
I don't know if you can hear mine. Can you hear it? I have music in the reception area, basically so that I'm having a conversation with somebody. It's not like being super overheard sort of thing out in the reception, perhaps. That's generally how I sort of roll with it. I don't play anything that's there's a Spotify thing called Calming Instrumental Covers, and that just runs here 24/7, and it's nice and long. The girls don't get too sick of it sitting out the front. I don't think they do. But so it's really just the instrumental stuff that is not necessarily, they're not going to be whistling to, or obviously you don't want someone sitting on their phone while they're having treatment, because they're really not being present, are they?
No.
If they're on their phone. So yes, that's basically, I don't have anything they're going to sort of rock along to necessarily, but you can still have some stuff. I mean, you know, that spa sort of stuff, or the raindrops, sometimes it drives people mad, that sort of stuff.
I said after 15 years in the industry, you don't have to listen to whale humping music anymore.
That'll be hump whales, I think, but anyway, I know what you're talking about.
Oh, so any last gold words, like what I really want people to understand, that the value of Bowen and how useful it is. So, do you have an elevator pitch?
No, I don't. I don't have an elevator pitch, because I'm talking to professionals here too. And so, but seriously, if you, as a way of actually just, well, two things, you mentioned it really early on about how you can extend your life as a therapist. If you can incorporate Bowen therapy into your practice, and you might have a day of doing Bowen, you might have a Bowen therapist, Bowen client or 2 or 3, and then have a couple of massage. You're going to extend your life, your therapy life. I'll be doing Bowen until Ozzie just turned 90. He can give you a treat. I mean, you can do it. You can do it forever if you want to. But also, it just it's going to expand your practice as well, because you're going to be treating day-old babies, women for fertility, elderly people in nursing homes, people sitting in wheelchairs, fully clothed, and getting results. So that's the amazing thing. I think that Bowen is so versatile, and it's not just for musculoskeletal problems. I think is the other side too.
That's what you're saying. That's a big nugget I'm picking up from this, is that when you are treating, you're actually treating visceral as well as, and there's the barrel technique, which is actually massaging the viscera, like the organs, but this is nowhere near that, and you're still making big changes on. I'm very, very excited about the bedwetting and also the constipation, because I've got a couple of patients of mine who've got pediatric, like kids who are having those problems, and it's really, as a musculoskeletal therapist, there's nowhere we can, that's out of our scope. But if I can sit there and say, I'm going to align you to someone from Bowen who does Bowen therapy, then that's a great adjunct to help my clients with my patients with their family, their loved ones. So that's actually quite amazing. So is there if someone that's listening to this has got someone who needs assistance from a Bowen practitioner, how do they go about finding someone in their area?
Probably the best way is to go onto there's a couple of major associations in Australia, 2 Bowen associations, if you like, is the Bowen Association Australia, so the BAA, and they have a practitioner list, and also the Bowen Therapists Federation of Australia, they also have a practitioner list as well. So Bowen Therapy Federation of Australia, BTFA, Bowen Therapy Federation of Australia, and then the BAA is the Bowen Association Australia. So basically anyone who's Bowtech trained, if you like, or come through the Aussie's original sort of teaching work, then that's going to be on the BAA, if you like. But BTFA, they're fantastic. So that's the best way, and certainly for training. If you want a qualification that's nationally recognised, as it's going across the bottom of the screen there, you'll see the Cert 4 and Diploma with Bowen Training Australia. So a lot of people, like even naturopaths or people who do homeopaths, sometimes looking for a gentle hands-on therapy to add to their toolkit. So sometimes they don't necessarily want to go through and do a diploma of remedial massage, or advanced diploma of myo. Maybe the Bowen therapy might be a way of actually working within that.
Yeah, excellent. And it's been so interesting. I've learned so much. I was going to try to do my Bowen a handful of years ago, and then kind of went down the different path of the neurolymphatic stuff. But it's great to know that we can still. I could start studying at 90 and keep working. You
certainly could start studying at 90, and you're never too late to go. I'm still at uni. Can you believe I'm doing 3rd year of the Myo clinical Myo at the moment at uni? And I'm the oldest bloke in the room, and I'm sitting there with my pen and paper, and they're all banging away on their computers a million miles an hour. But you're never too old to learn. I think lifelong learning is exactly what we need as therapists, because keeping up with the stuff that, as I said, we talked about Robert Flight a few times, and that some of that research that's coming out of that fascia is just absolutely amazing. So lifelong learning is what keeps me young, I think.
I'm going to be brave enough to send Robert an email and say, hi, are you interested in doing one of these Ask Me Anything? So I'm going to put my big girl panties on and do that, because I think that he's value add to this information. And thanks, Loretta. It's a great conversation. Thanks, Chris and Paula. Thank you so much. It's been awesome to have you guys here with us, Loretta. And Phil's 60 and just started. In fact, Phil did my course down in Melbourne, like a weekend, like a one-dayer. So it's been great. You're never too young and never too old to start something different. It's great for your
make a difference in people's lives. That's exactly what it's all about.
Neuroplasticity. Well, I'm going to let you go. You said you got a patient in half an hour, so get a chance to have some light lunch. And thank you, everybody, for coming in today. If you've got any questions or queries and you want to put them into the chat box a little bit later, yeah, you're right, Diane, age is only a number. I keep saying that I said I was 43 for a long time until my son said, Mum, you had to be 8 when you had me. So now I've revised my my lying age. But if you've got questions, put them in the chat box down there, and Chris hopefully will get a chance to, if he sees any of them that might be able to give you assistance. Don't forget, if you're looking for a massage therapist or Bowen therapist, it's the BAA or the BF.
The BTFA.
BTFA, Bowen Therapist Federation of Australia.
That's it.
Thanks again, everybody. Thank you, Chris. It's been absolutely amazing. And we'll see you again next month, hopefully for Diane Matowski. If I can't track her down, I'm going to see if I can grab Robert. So thanks again, everybody. It's been amazing. Cheers.
Good on you. Thanks, Paula. Bye.
Bye.